I put off intimacy with my boyfriend for months. Now he left me saying I only wanted a maintenance man. Can you believe the audacity? Like I'm some villain for having preferences about when and how I want to be touched. But fine, let me tell you exactly how this whole thing went down, because apparently everyone thinks Todd was some saint, and I was the evil girlfriend who destroyed our perfect relationship. We'd been together for about 14 months when this all started. The beginning was incredible. Obviously, I'm not some ice queen who never wanted him. We had amazing chemistry, couldn't keep our hands off each other, all that honeymoon phase stuff that makes you think you've found your person. Todd was everything I thought I wanted back then. He worked out constantly, had this whole fitness routine that kept him looking good, and he actually seemed to care about taking care of himself. Plus, he was handy around the house, which honestly was a huge turn-on at first. There's something sexy about a man who can fix things without calling someone else to do it. But then real life happened, and I guess I started getting comfortable. Is that such a crime? I had a demanding job, I was tired most nights, and honestly, I just wanted to relax when I got home. I'd put on my comfortable clothes, grab my favorite blanket, and settle in to decompress from the day. That's normal, right? That's what adults do when they're in committed relationships. They don't have to perform constantly. Todd started getting weird about it, though. He'd come sit next to me on the couch and start getting handsy, and I'm thinking, seriously? I just got home. I haven't even processed my day yet, and you want to jump straight into foreplay? It felt so selfish and demanding, like my comfort didn't matter as long as he got what he wanted. So yeah, I started putting him off. Let me just finish this episode. I'm really full right now. Maybe later. I just did my skincare routine. These aren't excuses. They're legitimate reasons why someone might not be in the mood. But Todd took everything so personally. He'd get this wounded puppy look whenever I said I wasn't feeling it, like I was personally attacking him by not being ready to drop everything for sex. It was exhausting having to manage his feelings on top of everything else. I'd try to be nice about it, suggest we could connect tomorrow instead, but he'd just sulk there next to me, radiating disappointment. Talk about a mood killer. The worst part was how he made it seem like I never wanted him at all. That's completely unfair. I wanted him when I wanted him, which was usually a few times a month when my body was actually in the right headspace for it. But apparently that wasn't enough for him. He needed constant validation, constant physical attention, like he was some kind of teenager who couldn't go a week without getting laid. It felt so immature and honestly kind of gross, how pushy he got about it. Then he suggested couples therapy, which I thought was pretty dramatic for what was basically just a libido mismatch, but fine. I agreed to go because I wanted to show that I was willing to work on things. The therapist was this older woman who kept talking about intentional intimacy and creating space for connection, which sounded reasonable enough in theory. She suggested we schedule specific times to focus on each other without distractions. I was actually open to this. It seemed like a mature way to handle things. But of course, Todd had to make it weird. Our first connection window. I'm trying to unwind from a stressful day, and he immediately starts pawing at me like we're in some porno. I had my show on in the background because it helps me relax, and he gets all pissy about the TV being a distraction. Like, sorry, I need more than 30 seconds of neck rubbing to get in the mood. I'd eaten a big dinner and felt bloated and uncomfortable. So I suggested we try again later, when I felt better. Instead of being understanding, he just laid there staring at the ceiling like I'd ruined his entire life. The second attempt was even worse. I told him I'd be ready after I finished folding the laundry, which seemed reasonable. I can't relax when there are chores hanging over my head. But he acted like I was deliberately procrastinating, when really, I was just trying to get my mental space clear so I could actually be present with him. By the time I finished everything, it was getting late, and I was tired. I offered to still do something quick, but he got all offended and said, "Never mind," in that passive-aggressive way that meant I was supposed to beg him to let me make it up to him. That's when I came up with the connection board idea. I thought it was actually pretty clever, a visual way to make sure we were both contributing to the relationship and creating space for intimacy. I had columns for household tasks, relationship tokens, and rewards, including physical connection. It wasn't like sex was some impossible prize you could only win once a year. It was just a way to make sure we were both pulling our weight and that I felt supported enough to be in the right headspace for romance. But Todd acted like I was some evil taskmaster, making him jump through hoops. He'd do the dishes and take out the trash, then act like he deserved immediate sex as payment. That's not how it works. I needed to feel emotionally connected and relaxed, not like I was some vending machine where you put in chore tokens and sex falls out. When I'd still need time to transition from household mode to intimate mode, he'd get all bitter about his tokens expiring. It was so transactional and gross, the exact opposite of what I was trying to create. The therapist started taking his side too, talking about how I seemed to be avoiding intimacy instead of just acknowledging that I have my own timeline for these things. I felt completely ganged up on, like my perfectly normal need for the right conditions was being pathologized. So I stopped going to therapy. Why should I pay someone to make me feel bad about having boundaries? Todd kept pushing, though. He'd bring up our connection issues at the worst possible times, right when I was trying to unwind for the night, or first thing in the morning when I was still groggy. I tried to explain that timing mattered, that I needed to feel relaxed and uncharged to be intimate, but he acted like I was making impossible demands. I offered morning connections if I didn't sleep in. But honestly, who wants to be woken up early for sex? I needed my sleep. I tried to compromise in other ways. Like this one night when we'd had a really nice day together. We went to this cute outdoor market, had a picnic, everything was perfect and romantic. But by the time we got home, I'd already taken off my makeup and put on my heavy night moisturizer. I explained that I didn't want to mess up my skincare routine, but I'd be happy to connect in a few hours if he was still up for it. Instead of appreciating that I was trying to find middle ground, he acted like I was making excuses again. The thing is, we had a great relationship outside of this one issue. We laughed together, we enjoyed each other's company, we had fun doing normal couple things. I didn't understand why he was so fixated on this one aspect when everything else was working so well. I told him that directly, that I thought our relationship was basically perfect except for his unrealistic expectations about frequency. But he kept saying he felt like he was begging for attention, which was such an ugly way to put it. I suggested he use better language like seeking connection, but he said changing the words didn't change how he felt. I was naturally more interested a few times a month, usually when my cycle put me in the mood. That's totally normal for women my age. But Todd acted like I was broken or withholding something from him. He wanted me to want him on his timeline, not mine. It felt so selfish and demanding. Why couldn't he just appreciate the times when I was genuinely in the mood instead of pressuring me when I wasn't? The final straw was so ridiculous. I'd asked him to install some bathroom shelves I'd been wanting forever, and to iron a dress for me since I had an important meeting the next day. These were simple things that would have taken him maybe an hour total, and I thought it was sweet that he was willing to help me out. When he finished, I was finally feeling relaxed and settled on the couch, ready to just enjoy some downtime together. But of course, he immediately started hinting around about sex. I'd literally just gotten comfortable, and he wanted me to get up and go through this whole production again. I gently told him I wasn't feeling it right then, that I just wanted to stay cozy and enjoy being together like this. Instead of appreciating the intimacy of just cuddling and being close, he completely lost it. He said he was done. Just like that. Over something so small and stupid. He started going on about how he felt like a maintenance man instead of a boyfriend, which was so insulting. Like helping out around the house was beneath him or something. I tried to explain that I appreciated everything he did, that it was part of what made me feel secure and cared for in our relationship. But he twisted it into this narrative where I was just using him for chores and didn't actually want him as a person. I offered to have sex right then to prove that I did want him, but he said it was too late, that he didn't want me to do it just to shut him up, which was so confusing. He'd been complaining about not having enough sex, but when I offered it, Suddenly it wasn't good enough because my timing was wrong. I couldn't win with him. He moved out that week, just packed up his stuff and left like our entire relationship meant nothing. I tried to give him some space to cool down, then sent him a long message explaining that I knew I'd been going through a stressful period and maybe hadn't been as available as usual. I invited him over to reconnect properly. No pressure, no excuses. But he basically said he didn't trust that anything would actually change. I was devastated. Here was this man I'd built a life with, who I'd been completely faithful to, who I'd supported and cared for, and he was throwing it all away because I wasn't DTF every single time he wanted me to be. It felt so shallow and disappointing. I thought he was better than that. 2 weeks later, I couldn't take it anymore. I missed him so much, missed us, missed having someone around to handle all the little things that make life work smoothly. The apartment felt so empty and quiet. I had to take out my own trash, figure out my own technical problems, do all my own errands. I realized how much I'd relied on him for those daily conveniences, and how much I'd taken that for granted. I decided to go to his mom's house. I knew he was staying there temporarily, and I thought maybe if she could see how much I was hurting, she might help us work things out. Mothers want their sons to be happy, right? And we'd had a good relationship before all this drama. I brought a bag with some of his things I'd found around the apartment, and I was honestly crying before I even got to the door. Seeing his mom just made it all feel so real and final. She was sweet to me, invited me in, made me tea, let me explain what had happened. I told her about how much I missed Todd, how empty and difficult everything was without him, how much he'd meant to my daily life. But then Todd showed up, and he was not happy to see me there. He immediately asked me to come outside, away from his mom, which felt kind of rude, honestly. Like I was some crazy ex he needed to hide from his family. We'd been together for over a year. I wasn't some random girl causing drama. I tried to explain to him what I'd been telling his mom, about how much I missed our life together. I listed all the things that felt wrong and empty now. No one to split chores with, no one to handle the practical stuff. No one to take care of the little daily tasks that keep a household running. I thought he'd appreciate knowing how much his contributions had mattered to me, how much I'd valued everything he did. But he just stood there looking cold and distant, like he was listening to a stranger. When I finished explaining, he said something that really stung. You miss having a maintenance plan, not intimacy. You didn't want closeness, you wanted convenience. That felt so unfair and reductive. Yes, I missed the practical support, but that was part of what made our relationship work so well. We were a team. We took care of each other in different ways. I took care of the emotional labor, the social planning, the household management, and he took care of the physical tasks and maintenance stuff. That's what couples do. They complement each other's strengths. I tried to tell him I'd do better, that I'd make more effort with the physical side of our relationship. I meant it too. I was willing to push myself outside my comfort zone because I could see how important it was to him. But he said that was still trying, and apparently he needed wanting. Like there's some meaningful difference between those things. Sometimes you have to try before you can want, right? Sometimes you have to create the right conditions for desire to show up naturally. He handed me back the bag I'd brought and told me not to come to his mom's house again, which felt unnecessarily harsh. Then he offered to call me an Uber, like I was some pathetic charity case who couldn't handle my own transportation. The whole thing felt so condescending and cold, nothing like the man I'd fallen in love with. I was hurt and angry by that point, so I told him I could get myself home just fine. I might have been a little sharp with him, but honestly, he deserved it after embarrassing me like that in front of his mother and treating me like I was some kind of stalker for trying to save our relationship. That was 8 months ago now, and I still think he massively overreacted to what was basically just a rough patch that most couples go through. I've talked to my friends about it, and they all agree that his expectations were unrealistic. Relationships aren't supposed to be like the honeymoon phase forever. Real love is about accepting each other's natural rhythms, and finding ways to make both people comfortable. I heard through mutual friends that he's been dating someone new for the past few months. Apparently, she's very different from me. More outdoorsy, more spontaneous, one of those girls who's always up for anything. Good for them, I guess. Some people are just more naturally high energy and don't need the same kind of emotional safety and comfort that I do. That doesn't make me broken or wrong. What really bothers me is how he's apparently been telling people his version of our breakup, making it sound like I was this cold, withholding person who never wanted him. That's not true at all. I wanted him plenty, just not on demand, whenever he decided he was in the mood. I needed the right conditions, the right timing, the right emotional space. That's not abnormal or unreasonable. I think what really happened is that Todd has some kind of validation issues that made him need constant physical reassurance. Maybe it comes from his gym obsession or his need to feel wanted and desired all the time. But that's his problem to work on, not mine to fix, by forcing myself into situations where I'm not comfortable. I've been doing fine on my own, honestly. I've gotten used to handling all the household stuff myself, and there's something liberating about not having to manage someone else's emotional needs and expectations all the time. I can watch my shows in peace, do my skincare routine without interruption, eat what I want when I want, without worrying about someone else's schedule or appetite. Sure, I miss some things about being in a relationship. It's nice to have someone to share experiences with, someone to split bills with, someone to help with the heavier chores. And I do sometimes miss the physical connection when I'm actually in the mood for it. But I don't miss feeling pressured and guilty all the time, or having to justify my natural rhythms to someone who couldn't accept them. I've been on a few dates since then, and I'm much more upfront now about my needs and boundaries. I explain early on that I'm not someone who's going to be available for sex multiple times a week, that I need emotional connection and the right circumstances to feel comfortable being intimate. Most guys seem fine with that, or at least they say they are. Maybe Todd was just unusually needy in that area. Sometimes I wonder if I should have tried harder to make it work, been more willing to push past my comfort zone for the sake of our relationship. But then I remember how awful it felt to be pressured and guilted all the time, and I know I made the right choice by standing up for myself. A man who really loved me would have found ways to make me feel safe and desired, not demanded and pressured. The connection board wasn't a bad idea. It was actually pretty innovative. I've seen similar concepts in relationship books and therapy resources since then. The problem wasn't the system. It was Todd's attitude about it. He wanted instant gratification instead of being willing to invest in creating the right conditions for genuine intimacy. I think about that last conversation sometimes, when he said I wanted convenience instead of closeness. But isn't convenience part of love? Isn't it loving to make each other's lives easier and more comfortable? I showed my love through managing our social calendar, keeping track of important dates, making sure we had a comfortable home environment. He showed his love through fixing things and handling physical tasks. That seemed like a pretty good partnership to me. Maybe his new girlfriend is one of those women who's always ready to go, who doesn't need any kind of emotional or physical preparation, who can just flip a switch and be instantly passionate. Some women are like that, I guess. But that's not me. And there's nothing wrong with knowing what I need to feel comfortable and connected. I'm not bitter about it anymore, mostly. I hope he's happy with whatever kind of relationship dynamic works for him. But I also hope he eventually realizes that what we had was actually pretty special, even if it wasn't perfect. Most long-term relationships involve some kind of compromise and patience around physical intimacy. That's just reality. I've learned a lot about myself through this whole experience. I know now that I need a partner who understands that desire isn't something you can demand or schedule, that it grows out of feeling safe and uncharged and emotionally connected. I need someone who appreciates all the ways I show love, not just the physical ones. And honestly, I'm glad I found out who Todd really was before we got any more serious. Imagine if we'd gotten engaged or moved in together permanently, and then this same conflict had come up. Better to know now that he wasn't capable of accepting me as I am, that he needed me to be someone different to be satisfied in our relationship. I still think he owes me an apology for how he handled the breakup, especially for being so cold and dismissive when I tried to work things out. But I'm not holding my breath for that. Some people just can't admit when they've been unreasonable or hurtful. That's his loss, not mine. These days, I'm focused on building a life that works for me, with my rhythms and my needs at the center instead of constantly trying to accommodate someone else's expectations. It's actually pretty peaceful. I have my routines, my shows, my comfortable spaces, and I don't have to justify any of it to anyone. That's worth more than trying to force compatibility with someone who fundamentally couldn't accept who I am.